Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for Arthur's Roundtable, another episode. You can watch it on Spotify and everywhere else you consume podcasts. So, really happy to have Brittany join us today. Brittany and I have known each other actually way back in the middle of the Cambridge Analytica days, where we met at a party in New York City, and she was in the throes of dealing with all that. And then we've met each other subsequently and become friends and talked about business and that sort of thing. So I'm super excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us today, Brittany.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Arthur. Really looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, after it was really interesting. Uh, after all that shenanigans with Cambridge Analytica, you went on a little trip, and then I think we suggested you go down to our hotel down in Mexico, and then a couple years later, I think it was after we met at Soho House, and you gave me your book, which was wonderful. Uh, Mary and I were watching, thumbing through some Netflix stuff, and then all of a sudden the Great Hack pulled up, and I didn't even know you were in it. And then what? Once I discovered that, I texted you and said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" Right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was 2017 when we first met. That was when I was still at Cambridge Analytica, but I had already pretty much decided that the way that data science was being used, especially in an electoral context, was in contravention of human rights. I had worked as a human rights lawyer for a lot of my life and trained as a human rights barrister in the UK, but also worked in politics, which is not always compatible with basic human and civil rights and the way that campaigning goes down. So once I
It's a bit of a
started,
nasty business, right? Yeah.
it is, in every country, there's different issues, I would say, but in the United States, the amount of money that is spent in politics allows you to do nearly anything, and the amount of data available for purchase or license that can be deployed across social media and digital platforms really allows people in an electoral context to do nearly anything they want. And we still don't have many federal laws that govern that in the United States. So here it definitely is a much bigger business and causes much larger problems than in some other countries where the amount of spending is highly controlled.
So that hasn't changed, but in terms of the landscape of, look at what has happened since Cambridge Analytica in terms of AI and technology advances. And I mean, it's just been, massive exponential scale. Is aside from, and the money's still there with the super PACs and all that business. Uh, are the tools and techniques similar, changed? Has it been dramatically different in, the influence game? Can you talk about?
Well, I think that's a really good question because when I was at Cambridge Analytica, although a lot of people wanted to pin us as, either the smartest people in the room or the snake oil salesman. So, everything, the truth is always somewhere in between. But I was at Cambridge working with some of the best data scientists and kind of digital ad tech developers, some of the best ones in the world. And they had built what I would say were early versions of AI for our digital deployment. So when we were working on whether it was commercial or political campaigns, we had algorithms that would go and test different types of digital content. So we could test hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of versions of ads until we would see the different ones that were performing with different types of people. So whether you were the type of person that needed a green or a blue button, whether you needed foreboding music or excited, happy music in the background, what type of imagery was resonating with you most. We would have algorithms that would go out and do A/B and split testing and all of the different types of automated testing in order to figure out what is going to work with you. And since then, since leaving Cambridge and becoming a whistleblower and therefore taking down the company, I've actually been looking for people who have those capabilities. And until the, I would say, blossoming of AI technology over the past couple of years, nothing since I left Cambridge Analytica have I ever seen that touches that. Now
Really?
with AI,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I haven't seen any big digital agencies that are going out and testing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people in order to optimize in the ways that Cambridge was. So it was highly advanced for the time, but now anybody is able to deploy that using advanced AI tools. And so for a regular Cambridge campaign, you might expect to have, 10, 20, 100. I think for the Trump campaign, Cambridge Analytica deployed over 10,000 different campaigns. Uh, that would be impossible for most other groups at that time. Usually you're running 3, 4, or 5 campaigns. You're running something for the families and something for the, older white working males and for, the disaffected young college students. And you get those big overarching groups, not down to the individual and what specifically works with them. But with AI now, I think it enables nearly any company that knows how to use AI tools to do some of the things that Cambridge Analytica was doing back then.
Was it a combination of the real talent and the endless amounts of money to fund that talent that enabled them to do that? I mean, or is their skill set really that unique?
I mean, at the time, I would say there were less people in data science and digital ad tech development than there are today. There's definitely many more people that have focused on that as their core competency. And now AI can build these tools, and we don't even need people to code some of these tools anymore. You can dream up a tool that you want, and you can ask an AI to code it, and then just go and edit the final version. So these days, nearly anything is possible, and you don't technically need human skills. You just need good prompt engineering in order to get it done.
Yeah. So if you don't mind sharing, what was you know, your, you were off put because you were a whistleblower and you got a lot of shit for doing that. But what was the underlying saving grace, if you want to call it that, that you felt that you were compelled to do this and bring this to the surface?
So I think my background was unique where I had spent a lot of my life working in human rights. And because I cared about human rights and civil liberties, that's why I got into politics, because I wanted to be able to work on campaigns for politicians who were going to go out there and protect people's individual rights. And that's how I really got into both politics and tech, by working on early campaigns. When I was still at boarding school at Phillips Academy, Andover, I was volunteering uh, for Howard Dean's campaign, for Barack Obama's senatorial campaign, for John Kerry's presidential campaign, and then for a lot of environmental rights groups, animal rights groups, children's rights groups, whatever really was there for me to participate in. I was just highly politically motivated. And because I was young and tech savvy, I ended up normally sitting on the tech team and trying out new tech tools on these campaigns. For Howard Dean, we were the first people to ever fundraise with email, and we broke all fundraising records that had ever happened. I was on Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. That was my second year at university. I actually quit university to move back home to Chicago and work on that full time. I was on the first 5 people on the new media team there with my friend Chris Hughes, who co-founded Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. He had gone to Andover with me, was the only person that decided not to quit Harvard to go work for Sean Parker in California, and actually came with us on the Obama campaign, moved to Chicago, and we started building out new tools in Facebook for Barack Obama's first presidential, the first people to ever use social media and political campaigning, which was obviously highly successful. Uh, Years later, when I got recruited into Cambridge Analytica, I was actually a PhD student writing my PhD on something called preventive diplomacy, which is how do you stop something before it turns into a crisis or a war. And for me, that ended up being a data science PhD. So how much data does who have? How is it getting modeled? And how is that intelligence getting into the hands of heads of state, ambassadors, military decision makers, so that they could prevent something before it happened? And I just didn't know enough about data science in order to finish that doctoral thesis. So I thought, okay, I know a bit about data science from building early algorithmic platforms on the Obama campaign. I can learn enough about this to finish my PhD and qualify as a human rights barrister. But my traineeship was at Cambridge Analytica. I took a part-time consulting job there to try to figure out how I could actually finish my doctoral thesis on how you use data science in prevention of war. And that spiraled out of control rather
Yeah,
quickly.
but what a great application of data, right? I mean, when you think, I mean, we could use some of that right now, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something where data science can really be of service to the world, where we can see behavioral patterns that are common before a crisis situation, and be able to go in and create thoughtful, peaceful intervention strategies before it actually turns into a violent conflict. And that was my entire academic and activist focus at that time. And the CEO of Cambridge Analytica and the head of Cambridge's Defense Department had presented to me a program that they were working on for NATO and all allied militaries, which allowed them to use data science to identify young people who were being recruited into ISIS online and
Ah,
how they were being targeted by terrorist controlled fake accounts. And overnight, they were disappearing from their homes in the United Kingdom and waking up in Syria because they were being radicalized and sneaking themselves out of their family homes. So it had become a national security issue for the United Kingdom, and they had created a budget for data scientists to come and help with this problem. And they were running counter propaganda communications to keep these kids safe at home and stop them from being radicalized by these fake accounts. And I thought, well, this is obviously something that I want to know how to do. This is incredibly powerful and very important for, peace and security. I learned a little bit more about data than I bargained for over
yeah.
those years, though. I ended up quitting my PhD to work there full time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought what they were doing was so important that I really needed to learn how to do it. And as they started taking on more and more controversial clients, people that I would have never decided to work for on my own, that's when I started being a little bit more concerned. Because in my opinion, the people that I've worked for in the past, even if they haven't done the best job as senator or as president, they in general were supposed to be a candidate centered on peace and human rights and social values, and would have, like on the Obama campaign, policies where there was no negative campaigning. So what they were putting out as campaign content was 100% positive. Nothing negative against other candidates in their party, nothing against the other party candidates, just promotion of the policies that they believed in and why they were important to people. Now that's a highly ethical way to run political communications, and it's not in general what most people do. Most people use negative campaigning and spend a lot of their money on negative campaigning. Whether it's tantamount to slander or libel is always questionable, but counter counterintelligence operations on political campaigns where you're constantly having people try to catch the other candidate out, and where your campaign or your super PAC or your PAC is spending a lot of money just concentrating on negative communications against your opponents, is now commonplace for most campaigns. And that's where a lot of campaigns started to get themselves in trouble, because there's a very thin line between disinformation and slander and libel. There's a very thin line between propaganda and incitement of violence or incitement of racial hatred. and there's a very thin line between negative campaigning and voter suppression.
Yeah, if you just look at history, one of the tools that anybody who wanted to influence anybody into doing something that served them or served, I don't, not necessarily a party, but their interests.
Mm-hmm.
You either threaten their family or threaten their livelihood, or you threaten them, and you do it by having dirt that you've dug up on them that they wouldn't otherwise want to have in the public domain. And this has been going on for thousands of years. It's not anything new. And there's a lot of that going on now in the current campaign. And I don't mind becoming having a political discussion, and I'm not suggesting that we do, but what's really interesting, I think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is it's been very clear that every administration has tried to influence the social media networks by holding a gun to their head. And some of them have turned themselves in, some of them have admitted it, some have admitted it after to see who's going to come into the next administration so they don't get, maybe coming clean is helpful. You know what I'm talking about? Um,
Yeah.
uh, does X really feel like something that is less influenced than everything else? Was it a good thing, that Musk bought it? What do you think about all that stuff? Because it's pretty, involved, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I have been tirelessly campaigning, especially in the years following my whistleblowing process, for social media platforms to become a lot more transparent and responsible about how their algorithms function and how you are seeing the content you're seeing, whether the content you're seeing has been manipulated, whether it's been paid to be shown to you for a specific purpose, whether your data has been used to specifically put this content in front of your eyes. And there's been a decent amount of work that has been done since then. Obviously, not a lot of federal US law has changed, but a lot of state laws have changed, and a lot of lawsuits have been won. Not just thanks to my whistleblowing evidence, but the whistleblowing evidence of Frances Haugen and many others who have come out since 2018. And all of this is pointing to how are these platforms uh, collecting data both on and off their platform, because a lot of them, collect data about their users from all other areas of your life, not just how you use their social media platform. Therefore, they have such a comprehensive understanding of who you are and how you behave and what you're interested in, that they're really able to offer uh, the high bidders of the people who buy their advertising a way to really get to you and find you no matter where you are, and make sure that you are seeing the content that those people paying for it would like you to see. Now, that could be very innocuous and benign,
Yeah,
or
it's a commercial enterprise, right? So,
yeah,
right.
I
What
have no
one
problem
would
with it.
one would argue that that's okay, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's okay.
target market, right? Yeah.
It's how technology functions, and it's how, in some ways, you could also say that individuals that normally wouldn't have a voice, startup companies that would normally not have an audience, have a more equal opportunity to get out there, because you can use data to find your audience, which is a lot less expensive than billboards and TV in the traditional ways that you're able to actually get a foothold in a marketplace. And so, in a way, social media advertising has become a great equalizer. Like digital advertising has allowed people to reach audiences they never would have otherwise. So it's not really a problem with the functionality. The problem is the uh, lack of limits on the functionality, which is that when uh, people who are paying to put content on digital platforms are allowed to go so far to the point where they are actually breaking laws and intervening in people's human rights and civil rights. So this is where what I was touching on a few minutes ago is quite important because misinformation or disinformation might not be illegal, but slander and libel is. Uh, you can say negative things on social media, negative campaigning is fine, but incitement of violence or incitement of racial hatred is illegal. You are allowed to, you know, express your disdain for other candidates, but voter suppression is illegal. So there's a thin line between these things, and some things that if you were to scream in a town square, you would be arrested for. But if you say it on social media to maybe 1 million people, nothing might happen.
Yeah.
So we're not policing our digital square the way that we are our physical town square, even though the laws should still apply. And I think that's really where this discourse comes into what is censorship and free speech and what is just enforcement of the laws that we already have that we've agreed to abide by. And in an electoral context, what scares me the most is the disinformation and voter suppression that leads to people having no idea who they're voting for, what the truth is, how to find factual information, and people that are scared away from actually going to the ballot box. And that's the tools of dictatorships, not democracies.
Yeah. The it's kind of frightening because it's so powerful, right? Uh the is it as simple as the government as such a powerful gun to the head of many of the social media companies in terms of eliminating their liability through Section 230 or whatever the right number is? I forget.
Yeah,
Right. So there's a
you're right.
liability issue, and that even the government in a various ways says if you don't let us censor some of your information, then we're going to pull that trigger and put you out of business. And I know that's a lot more complicated than it sounds, but is that really, do they have that big of leverage? And is Zuckerberg that scared? Because I mean, he came right out and admitted on Lex Friedman and then wrote the letter recently that he was just told what to do and he had to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mark likes to have a lot of excuses for many things. So
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty clear that he's not, you know, I'm not going to say he's a bad guy, but you know, where you stand often depends on where you sit, right? So,
well, as a CEO, you get to make the decisions, especially the way he's structured Facebook, where he has about 80% of the decision-making power and voting shares. So he's the dictator of Facebook. No one's telling him what to do.
yeah,
100% of the decisions are his. So if he is now apologizing to Donald Trump because he thinks he's going to be president again, which is what it looks like to me, then okay, maybe Trump accepts his apology.
yeah, right.
But we'll see how that goes over the coming months. But for me, what I really believe is we need to come to some sort of decision as a society of whether tech CEOs and their boards and executives are responsible for what happens on their platforms or that they're not. Because the fact that we have uh, some tech CEOs that are in jail
Yeah,
or founders or main developers of certain tech platforms that are in jail and others that walk free as some of the wealthiest people on earth. um, it doesn't make sense. It's really one or the other, and I know that every jurisdiction is going to feel slightly differently, but in the end, if you've created a tech platform, you either are responsible or you are not, and we are applying that rule differently amongst different platforms.
yeah. Can we? Is it realistic to being that there's such global reach with the tech platforms? You know, Musk come out and said, "Look, we obey the laws of the country." Right? That's what he says. And I'm not saying he's not doing that, but that sounds like a sound policy. You don't, if you want us to be here, then we'll obey your laws. In the US, we have the First Amendment. So that's our law. And that doesn't mean that the First Amendment applies in other countries. And so,
Mhm.
you know, you sort of have to bend to the will of the country that you want to operate in. Uh, but I think what you say is really important is either we're going to have them responsible or not. And right now, they're not.
Well, some of them are being held responsible,
Well, I mean,
it seems.
but arguably he's not in this country, right? The
Mhm.
what's it called? Uh,
Pavel Durov of
yeah,
Telegram.
Telegram. Like
Mhm.
that seems fishy, right? Something else is going on there.
Mhm.
Uh, but that on the surface just is looks uncool. Like, what are you doing? There's some other agenda there, right?
Mhm.
Um, so
Yeah, exactly. And I would consider the same with it's a similar conversation when we're talking about Ross from the Silk Road as well. He builds
yeah,
a technology platform. People use it. Some of those people were breaking the law. Some of them weren't. But he was held responsible for that and has been in prison for a decade.
yeah,
Uh, and so why is Mark free and Ross isn't?
yeah. Look, people launder money through Gmail every day,
Yeah,
right?
of
Yeah,
course. We're not arresting the executive team of Google
right.
because to us that doesn't make sense. So we really need to have clear delineation in the law for us to really understand when tech platforms should be responsible and what they should be responsible for, but certainly lessening harm to the users is important. It's just how do you better lessen harm? And I think the conversation about fully open free speech without any censorship is highly supported at the moment around the world. But then there's also the thought of, you know, fully supported free speech is one thing. But as a human rights lawyer, I know that the whole point of human rights is that your right to free speech ends when you are contravening someone else's human rights. So your human rights end where someone else's begin. So if you use your free speech, your right to free speech, to contravene other people's rights, that is not
Yeah,
you
seems
exercising
like
your
a
right
pretty
to free speech.
clear line, a line that if crossed is in violation, but sometimes it's muddy where it is, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like what I referred to earlier, which is that if you were to say some of these things that people are allowed to say on social media and yell them at people in a town square, you would be arrested.
yeah,
But because you've posted it on social media and millions of people can see it, and you didn't scream it in person at physical people, nothing's happening.
yeah,
So that how do we want to play that? It's one or the other. Either we are going to police the digital square the way we do the town square, or we're going to have different set of laws and expectations for the digital square than we do for our analog life.
yeah.
And I think it's, there's two different paths that can be taken.
I think one of the hazards of social media is it has created a lot of cowards, or at least exposed cowards. You know, they would never say that to you in person, but they, you know, get some sort of strange pleasure out of commenting ridiculous things endlessly just to create havoc. And a lot of it may be robots and all that, or bots and that sort of thing. But, you know, people are cowardice when they're not looking at you in the eye.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the core components of digital literacy. After becoming a whistleblower, I started the Own Your Data Foundation with my sister to concentrate on you know education, awareness, training programs, workshops on digital literacy and being able to protect yourself from cyberbullying, how not to be a cyberbully, how to understand how to use empathy on social media. and that just because you are anonymous, you should not be saying things to anyone that you wouldn't feel comfortable saying to their face. This is especially helpful for children and young people and parents who are teaching their children uh, about going online for the first time and how they handle it. These are all issues that most able bodied, smart adults still do not have a grasp on. And it's because we were not raised with digital literacy as a part of our technology education. We were just taught how to use technology, but not how it functions or how to use it well.
Yeah, thank you for doing that because most people point out a problem and don't have a solution.
Mhm.
So, how many times does that happen? Right? It's
Yeah,
just like somebody coming in, an employee or staff, whatever, coming into the office with a problem without a solution at hand, right? What good is that? What,
yeah.
know?
As a well-trained activist, I yeah, I have a lot of opinions about the armchair activists who constantly have a complaint but aren't actually going to go do anything about it. And I've spent my whole life, yes, being upset about things that are going wrong in the world, but going and actually doing something about it. And it's what allows me to sleep better at night. Definitely finding things and figuring out how we build a solution, how we fix it has been how I've spent most of my time on this planet, I think.
Yeah, let's move on for a minute if it's okay with you. Uh, Talk about the book, the new book. No, there's a new series. So let's go through that evolution a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was so happy to get a text from you, and you and your wife saw my film. So when I came out as a whistleblower, it was actually the last time I was in Palo Alto. I came out here because I was going to give a copy of my Cambridge Analytica computer to the Guardian headquarters over here. The Guardian headquarters and bureau chief in America is out here amongst all of the Silicon Valley tech companies. And I came out here to undertake my whistleblowing process. And then the day that my whistleblowing articles came out in the Guardian, which ended up becoming over 5 million articles, about 35,000 per day in every language around the world. I quickly got calls from some of the world's best documentary filmmakers who asked if they could come interview me. And so they did and ended up following me for 9 months to create The Great Hack. They had been trying to make a movie about data for about 5 or 6 years since the Sony hack. And we're trying to find a riveting enough story where you can talk about something that people can't see and still make it interesting enough. And so we ended up uh, working on that film. I was a subject, obviously not a producer or director, but they followed me and a few other characters around throughout our whistleblowing testimony processes. And that was an incredible opportunity. One, because it always feels a lot safer if you're going in and out of testimony with surrounded by a huge team. So that was quite nice to be able
Yeah,
to
no
work
denying what happened, right?
working with the Netflix crew and the others, which was the documentary film production team who have won Netflix most of their Oscar, Emmy, and BAFTA nominations. They're just incredible people. Everybody that I worked with, top people in Hollywood, from you know Lynn and Norman Lear to just some of the greats. Um, we created this film alongside a lot of animation to actually show people what happened, because I think a lot of people don't actually understand what even occurred in the Cambridge Analytica Facebook data scandal.
Yeah,
And
right. Yeah.
you know, the main issues are things that people can't see and they can't touch, and therefore, if you're not very technically skilled, it's kind of confusing what happened.
Yeah, you don't
And
have a
so,
basis of understanding how all that stuff works, right? Yeah.
yeah, so we used a lot of animation from some of the, again, top animators in the world to come and show people how data is siphoned from you, how it's collected and matched, and how you're put into groups for targeted communications, and being able to illustrate that. The feedback that we got was, for the first time, tens of millions of people around the world for the first time actually understood what was going on, which was huge, and started to think about their own personal data use and what they release about themselves publicly and how content gets on their screens and why it's paid to be shown to them, and to start to be a more conscious consumer of digital content. For I think it was estimated that nearly 1 billion people have seen this film now,
Yeah.
which is
Not
huge.
surprising. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
It's
huge.
really fascinating. I think what happened is people became aware, catalyzed by the Cambridge Analytica whistleblowing, and then the film saying, wait a minute, I enjoy all this stuff for free, but I guess I'm really the product, even though I think it's such a minute thing. When you aggregate all that, it becomes a big thing, right? And so I think even the people that don't think about that finally realize, holy shit, then they actually know everything about me, or everything that needs to be known that's helpful, right? I think people had finally come to that awareness.
Yeah, and it's a big ball dropping if no one's ever really thought about it before.
Yeah.
And so to be able to be the person that switches on the light bulb for people, I think was a huge opportunity and an honor. And so I've been carrying that through by trying to bring more responsible technology education and awareness, and data ownership tools to the world, whether that be supporting startups, helping governments in their legislative drafting on data protection and data ethics, and in general, continuing conversations like this to raise education and awareness on these topics. It's just so incredibly important. It couldn't be more important than now, when we're going into the age of AI, where everything is 1,000 times faster than it was when this happened. So I think what we're seeing over the next couple months ahead of the election is going to be even more extreme than what we saw in 2016. And it was 2016 that disturbed me so much that I decided to take the risk on my own personal life and career to become a whistleblower in the technology space.
Yeah. Um, I want to talk about, there's another uh, documentary or film coming, right?
There is. We
Can
will
we
soon
talk
be able
about
to talk
that?
about
Well,
that.
we don't have to. No, if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. Uh,
I will
the
when we can.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very exciting.
so are you willing to make a comment on what's going on now with this current election, and how, I mean, I think you could see the writing on the wall that the incumbent administration was going to come out and try to do the Russian hoax again. And we know that there's governments all over the world trying to influence this election, so it's not like it's a surprise. But how is it different now? Are people going to believe that it's really Russia, or are they going to blame it on Trump again? What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a different landscape than what everyone hoped for or was looking towards. I mean, when we started out this electoral cycle, there were tons of Democrats in the running that could have possibly gone up against Biden in the primaries. There were tons of Republicans. There were even some incredible independent candidates. Uh, Although Bobby Kennedy started as a Democrat and then left as an independent, and
Yeah.
now has joined the Trump campaign. So
I
it's
mean,
been and
you got to hand it to him, because he's done so much good for health and challenging.
so much good.
Oh,
He is
it's
an amazing
unbelievable what
man.
he's done. Look, we all have. What's interesting about Bobby is he's an open book. I mean, there's probably stuff that we don't know, but he just says, "Look, I've done some stupid shit in my life, and here it is." Right? Unlike most candidates are trying to hide all that stuff and lie about it, right?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I love Bobby and his family. I actually worked on his campaign from last May until the holidays, like December, uh, where I left to concentrate on my commercial ventures because I can't be full time in politics, but I did part time consultancy as head of data on his campaign, from when he was still in the
Nice.
Democratic Party to when through becoming an independent. I did not think he was going to join the Trump administration, but he reminded me so much of Barack Obama and why I went to go work for Barack. Barack was a constitutional lawyer and human rights activist.
Yeah.
Barack, even though having law degrees from Harvard and Columbia, went and took a $15,000 a year job organizing in the South Side of Chicago with church groups to try to prevent gang violence. I mean, an amazing man. And on Bobby's side, he spent most of his life as a top environmental lawyer, helping solve large scale issues in environment and health and the intersection between the two. I mean, he's fought Monsanto twice and won. He's sued the U.S. Navy for using Puerto Rico as a bomb testing site. He served 9 months in maximum security prison for that and won.
Yeah.
Literally won against the U.S. Navy in court. I mean, he's an amazing person, and I hope that should Donald become President Trump again, that it's with Bobby as head of the Department of Health or head of the EPA or.
He could be the food czar and solve a lot of problems because we
I
know
know.
how big that, the preservatives, I mean, there's so much evidence that we're feeding our kids bad stuff. I mean, it's not cool.
Yeah, and he's very intelligent about that. I'm also friends with Callie Means, who has been
Her-
appointed to be a part of that program. Callie is fantastic. Um, and I really believe, oh, yes, amazing. Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah, I did a talk with Callie last summer at Russell Brand's festival in Wales, actually.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
Callie is amazing, and the fact that him and Bobby have joined uh, the possible future administration. I wish that Kamala Harris would have been open to something like that, but the Democrats were not because they unfortunately decided to see Bobby as a foe instead of a friend, and that is a great disgrace to the Democratic Party that a Kennedy had to join the Republicans in order to get into office.
Listen, things evolve, right? And so
Mhm.
we can argue about how much is shifted from left to right, and that the left isn't the left anymore, and the right isn't and so it's there's an evolution going on. So
Mhm.
there's and it's a blip on the screen of time, but there's definitely a shift. Uh, Democratic values aren't the same as democracy, right? And
Yeah,
Republican values have not been. So it's really interesting to see what's going on, and we could talk about it forever, but uh,
forever.
it's fascinating times, that's for sure. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, the next few months are going to be very special indeed. But I am hands off
Yeah.
completely for the rest of this cycle, and I am waiting to see what happens. As a resident of Puerto Rico, I cannot vote, so I am fully hands off. And no longer working on any campaign or PAC or anything like that. I'm fully dedicated to my commercial ventures at the moment. I think I have spent a lot of my life in politics, and it's time for me to sit this one out.
Yeah. So let's talk about the commercial ventures. We talked a little bit about this prior. So
Mhm.
let's dig in. Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing quite a few things over the past, 6, 7 years across the data protection, cybersecurity, and ethical data products space. I've sat on either as a co-founder, board member, or advisory board member of quite a few different companies. Two of them we've taken public on NASDAQ, including most recently my green Bitcoin mining company, Griffin Digital Mining, where we seek to, I'm really seeking with each of my commercial ventures to solve a very specific problem using ethical technology and to provide people, companies, governments with tools where they can make positive impact with technology, where they can make good ethical decisions with technology, where they can enable people to protect their own rights with technology. And that's really what I've been focused on. So I've worked on digital identity products, quantum resistant encryption, private messaging apps, data ownership solutions, and of course, the first 100% renewable energy Bitcoin miner in order to have a voice in the space against legislators or other people that said, you know, renewable and sustainable Bitcoin mining is not possible. We even worked with BlackRock, RMI, and Energy Web to create the first third-party sustainability certificate for the Bitcoin mining space, so that we actually
Very
have a
cool.
third party. Yeah, it's pretty cool. We released it in June of this past year called the Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol, and you get a sustainable Bitcoin mining certificate on an annual basis if you meet certain sustainability standards and criteria. So we have an indicator set, and it's a data analysis of all the ways that you use energy and carbon emissions throughout your company. So it's like a carbon emissions audit on steroids, everything from the creation of your computers, how the ASICs are getting to you, what energy they're being plugged into, how they're being retired, how much your company executives are traveling, like the whole thing. And it's pretty great. But in general, when I see a way for technology to be used in an impactful way, I'm interested in that. And I've been lucky enough to now, for the first time, actually step up and be the CEO of my own startup, which I've been working on for a few years, but only just founded in January, which is to use technology to solve a very niche problem, but it's a problem in historical preservation. I started my career as an archaeologist,
Right. Remember
surprisingly.
us talking about that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the day, and that was my first job. It was what I was originally going to major in at university. I ended up moving it to my minor in order to become a lawyer. And I have been waiting to come back and solve the problem of sustainable financing for historic preservation. So the preservation of landmarks, monuments, grade listed buildings, archaeological heritage sites, that even extends to art and antiquities that need a restoration and upkeep budget, a budget to commercialize it and open source that amazing history so that it's accessible to people. And what I've done is create a private members club for people who are interested in this. Either they are estate owners of physical estates like monuments, landmarks, castles, archaeological heritage sites, or they might be an estate owner of an art estate. And then on the other side, we have all of our friends who are serial entrepreneurs, multi-exit founders who would love to invest in historic estates, but certainly don't have the time or knowledge to manage them. And so between the estate owners and the investors, we've created a platform and a private members club where all of our estate owners that would like to take private investment into their estates can do so, either as a private placement, as a security tokenization, where we can securitize a part of the estate, as a bond issuance, or even as a securitization where we can take the securities public on a proper securities exchange. And we bring in that private investment, make a liquidity event for the estate owner, and then there is a sustainable treasury for that estate in order to undertake the annual restoration, upkeep, the opening it to the public, the running it as a museum, the running it as a commercial business with a, restaurant and equestrian sports or a longevity spa or whatever makes sense for that estate. And all of our investors get access to all of the estates in our network, and all of our estate owners get access to the white glove services of assistance for the estate owners. And so for all of our technology buffs, being able to buy security tokens on exchanges and own a part of a couple hundred different historic estates that you can access through an app, is quite exciting.
Yeah, it is
Uh,
exciting. What,
and yeah, and then for the estate owners that inherited a castle but did not inherit any cash, it takes off the pressure of how do you open this to the public for a few months a year? How do you fix the roof every 5 to 7 years? How do you actually make sure that this doesn't become a depreciating asset and actually could be an appreciating asset by bringing more commercial value to it? So, solving problems on both sides, because I've certainly seen some of my friends who have made a lot of money in technology exits, especially in crypto, trying to buy castles and then realizing that that is something that they should have
they have to
done a
sell
little
some of their Bitcoin to finance the upkeep, right?
yeah, exactly. So we make sure the investors don't have stress and the estate owners don't have stress, and it solves a problem on both sides.
Have you done any of this? I have a friend of mine that's bought into landmark buildings in cities that need to be maintained as landmark buildings, and there's buckets of money that will help that happen. Have you done any of this in the US using those public funds to help leverage the acquisition of that and maintain it as a landmark building?
That's actually why we started our company in France, because France has the most well-funded Ministry of Culture in the world. They'll give you up to 40% of your restoration costs if you're taking care of a grade one listed landmark or monument, which is
Nice.
huge because there's over 11,000 grade one listed landmarks and monuments in France. And they do have the money to do that. So that can be, millions or tens of millions in non-dilutive funding. Also, the European Union and the European Commission have significant funding for these activities, as well as France's large private foundation, which normally funds grade two and grade three listed buildings. So usually there is financial support. It's hard to get if you don't know how to do it. We've built a team that are all historic preservation experts that have done this their entire career, so they know exactly what to do to get access to that non-dilutive funding, and that in general, makes the company more profitable that we have access to funds like that. But at the same time, taking in investment as a regular commercial real estate venture.
What's the name of the company? It's
Chateaushi.
that's so good.
Thank you.
That's so good.
We're actually minting our security tokens on Bitcoin, so
Yeah.
you can literally buy castles on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
which
exciting.
is so it makes the name even more perfect.
Yeah.
When we started the company, you could not mint security tokens on Bitcoin, but today you can. So
Yeah. Very clever. And so this is open for investment now?
yeah, absolutely. We have our seed round open. We are doing three different things in our business. One is that, as I said, we're running this as a private members club. We have partnered with the former CEO of Soho House, Annabelle's, and the Ivy, Des McDonald, as well as the former CEO of the Michelin Guide, who gave all the chefs their stars, Michael Ellis. And we're creating a downtown private members club in Paris, London, and New York for our members to use as a daily use club. So our first one is in Paris, and we're going through due diligence on a few different buildings to buy that. Secondly, we have our real estate arm of the business has already closed our first deals, which is very exciting.
Nice.
So we take a percentage of each liquidity event or investment that we bring in for our estate clients. So we normally recommend, depending on what the estate owner is looking for, that we bring in investment for up to 49% of the estate so that they can't lose control. And all of that minority investment will go to people that we know who they are and would come and use the estate for a part of the year, which is very exciting, or can apply to use the estate, either the entire thing or just rent rooms or just come to events that are going on at that estate. But we help broker the minority investment to create that treasury for the estate owners. And then our hospitality business obviously runs our downtown private members clubs, but we'll have an annual event program of exciting things going on at historic estates all around the world that our members and investors get access to.
Is it only historical estates?
We have had a large interest from luxury estates or estates that are special in some kind of way. We do have a partner with which to do those things through, so that we can still help people who would like that service, but we are very much focusing and keeping our brand on the historic estates, because the whole reason why I would be willing to spend 100 hours a week at this point in my life, starting a new business, is because of the impact of it, and making sure that historic estate owners that are taking care of historic gems, landmarks, and monuments that we can't see fall to ruin, that I want my children and grandchildren to be able to experience in the way that I did. That's really the problem I'm trying to solve. As much money as there is in helping, larger scale estate owners get liquidity events, we will be taking a smaller piece and doing that through partners, so that we can really concentrate on just grade listed estates.
Yeah, very cool. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a noble cause. And also, we went to, where did we go? The Vanderbilt? Asheville? Have you been to Asheville?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Mhm.
That
I
is
know which building you're talking about. It's amazing.
out of control. And the
Mhm.
Vanderbilts still maintain and own it. And so, I don't know what that's all about, meaning you would think they'd have endless amounts of money, but they've really kept it so beautiful. Yeah, it was impressive.
And to give every historic estate owner the opportunity to do that
Yeah.
is something very important to me. When I first moved to the United Kingdom for university, again, when I thought I was going to be an archaeologist before I decided to become a lawyer, I had so many friends that had inherited historic homes, whether they be castles or manor homes, but some sort of grade listed building. Many of them, they inherited it and it had been in their family for all of time. So for 20, 30 plus generations, this thing was built for their family by the king or queen at the time, you
Right.
commissioned by the king or queen for their family. And they had a normal job. They were a doctor or a journalist or something, that commanded a normal salary, and there was no way that they could keep up with the cost of this place. And if they hadn't inherited any cash and just the estate, it became a huge thing. And I saw many of my friends have to sell their family homes, which had never belonged to anybody else. And I thought, what a tragedy for the upkeeping of the history and the sharing of the history, that someone from America or China or Dubai is going to come in and just buy it. And all of that now is lost when the
The
family knows
legacy.
how to
Yeah.
take care of it,
Yeah.
knows every story, knows every piece of furniture, every piece of art, and could really upkeep it properly and share the history properly from a more, you know, respectful, emotional perspective. I really started to see that making sure that the estate owners remain involved if they want to be involved, and just have the financial support by opening up their estate to other people that would like to enjoy it. It's a win-win, because there's certainly a demand for experiences and stays and events at
No,
castles, manor homes, other
no
grade
doubt.
listed
Yeah.
estates. There's an endless demand for that. And obviously, a lot of the people who have that demand are not prepared to take care of these places and don't know how, and would not like to be the sole responsible person for doing that. So eventually, over the past 25 years that I've been thinking about this, we finally came to a point in 2021 where I built a team and I would say, let's really do the R&D on this and make this happen. So it's been a passion project, a labor of love, but now my full-time concentration.
Are you comfortable in, obviously, the answer is going to be yes, but with some color, causing this to be a commercial success at scale? Is that 2 years out, 3 years out? What's that look like?
Yeah, so what is really interesting is that there are now starting to be easier and easier financial models where you can get things like this done pretty quickly. I think you can take an estate from due diligence, valuation, figuring out the deal, onboarding them, creation of the securities, and getting it either um, bonded, security token deal, a public launch on a Swiss securities exchange, or a private placement investment. You can go from start to completion in 6 months, if everything goes according and the due diligence checks out and the valuation makes sense and it's an attractive enough place. Like that's that's pretty fast. We've had over 400 estates inquire to go through this program. So I've said I'm going to try to do 50 over this next year. And with us taking a percentage of each of those deals, then I believe, within a year, we can be quite commercially successful on the real estate side of the business. And that will support us being able to acquire nicer historic buildings in the downtown of Paris, London, New York, where we're concentrated, to have um, find establishments for our members to use on a daily basis. In general, a lot of successful private members clubs, Michelin star restaurants, interesting hospitality ventures, even ones that have been started by our business partners. You can really significantly increase the value of the real estate once you create a nice commercial hospitality business in there. So for us, fully purchasing the real estate of our clubs that are running is great, and then having a fractionalized real estate portfolio, owning a piece of all of our clients' estates and then opening them up to our members is the other piece. So but I really see it year two, us being able to acquire our second wholly owned piece of real estate in London, and hopefully by year three being able to do that in New York as well.
Yeah, Soho House finally pulled the trigger, I guess, last year and did a quasi-public, some sort of, I can't remember exactly how it was structured, but they own most of the real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So that some demonstration of success there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the most important thing is to create these liquidity events for these estate owners, because it is such a big problem. A lot of banks see them as too risky for an 100% mortgage. But if they do get offered a mortgage and they can't pay it back, then all of a
what good
sudden
is that?
the
Yeah.
bank owns the castle. So there's not good choices for estate owners to get help. It's either 100% mortgage or 100% sell.
Yeah.
We're saying sell a minority portion, let us help you commercialize it, and you get to keep your house.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Have you
it's a win-win for everybody.
have you uh, got an area in New York City you're focused in?
Not yet. New York is the third spot for us. We've already been shown and offered quite a few interesting places. But for us, we're concentrating on Paris first and making that launch a really nice success. Finishing due diligence on which place we're going to buy, getting that purchased and opened in 2025. And when we open our Paris Club, we'll also launch our membership app, which will give all of our members access to booking rooms or entire estates or tickets to events at all of these places around the world. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
sounds really exciting. Sign me up.
Amazing. Would love to have you as a part. I think you have great taste in fabulous places.
Yes, you're very kind. Well, listen, this has been so much fun. Thanks for doing this. And if it's okay with you, can we check in again in a couple months and talk more about all this stuff,
Yeah,
especially the
absolutely.
commercial
I would
stuff?
I would absolutely love to anytime.
Yeah. So good luck out there in California.
Thank
Uh,
you so much.
enjoy yourself. Come to
Should be
Park
a fun
City.
time.
Mary and I, we've got we got it all wired here in Park City. So come on out to Utah.
Oh, I would love to. I might have to make it to Sundance this year as well.
Come on
So
out. We got it all going on. Yeah.
would love to.
Thank you for doing this. Really, it's
Of
great to see
course.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. It was wonderful, and I'd love to also talk about some of the other programs that you do. I remember, you guys do the dinners and other sort of kind of roadshow-esque
Yeah.
program. Certainly be interested in that because, as a commercial real estate business, I will be perpetually in fundraising mode for the rest of my life with this project.
Right. We'd love to help. I'd love to help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
We've
that'd be really
we've
fun.
we really have a great community. It's grown so gently over time, and so people are open to talking about things, and so we've benefited from that immensely. And so we'd love to do that. So let's do it offline. Okay.
Amazing. That
Great.
sounds great.
Thanks.
Cheers, Arthur. Have a good
See you.
one.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.